How could a seasoned hiker simply vanish without a trace in one of America's most beautiful and treacherous forests? I want you to imagine this for a moment. You wake up one morning, kiss your daughter goodbye, grab your hiking boots, and head into the wilderness you've explored dozens of times before. The forest is familiar. The trails are marked. You've done this 100 times. You know these woods like the back of your hand. But this time something is different. This time you never come home. Your family waits. Hours turn into days. Days turn into weeks. Search parties comb through every inch of the forest. Dogs pick up your scent and then lose it. Helicopters circle overhead. Your face is plastered on every news channel, every missing person flyer, every Facebook page in the state. And then, nothing. The searches stop. The case goes cold. Your family is left with an emptiness that swallows them whole, a silence so loud it drowns out everything else in their lives. 2 years pass, 2 entire years of wondering, of hoping, of praying that somehow, somewhere, you're still alive. And then one day, against all odds, against every rational explanation, you're found, alive, alone, shivering in an abandoned cabin deep in the Oregon wilderness, barely recognizable, barely human. This is the story of Rachel Lawson and what happened to her in those 2 years, what she experienced, what she survived, what she discovered in the heart of that forest is something that will shake you to your core. But here's what I need you to understand right now before we go any further. This isn't just a story about one woman's disappearance. This is a lesson about the dangers that lurk in places we think we know, about the things we overlook when we feel safe, about the line between reality and something far darker. Because what happened to Rachel, it could happen to anyone, and it could happen to you. It could happen to someone you love. So stay with me, because by the end of this story, you're going to learn something that could save a life, something that could protect the people you care about most. And if you believe that everyone deserves to be found, no matter how lost they seem, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story is just beginning. Rachel Lawson was 34 years old when she disappeared. She wasn't some naive teenager looking for adventure. She wasn't a reckless thrill seeker throwing caution to the wind. Rachel was a mother, a teacher, an experienced hiker who had spent nearly a decade exploring the forests of Oregon. She knew the rules. She followed them. She respected the wilderness. And that's what made her disappearance so terrifying. It was a Thursday morning in late September when Rachel told her daughter Emma she was going hiking. Emma was 12 at the time, old enough to understand her mother's love for the outdoors, but young enough to still worry every time she left. "Just a day hike, sweetheart," Rachel said, ruffling Emma's hair. "I'll be back before dinner. Promise." Rachel had planned to hike the Eagle Creek Trail, a popular route known for its stunning waterfalls and lush greenery. She'd done it countless times before. The trail was well-marked, well-traveled, relatively safe. She packed light, just a backpack with water, some snacks, a first aid kit, her phone, and a map. She was wearing her usual hiking gear, sturdy boots, moisture-wicking layers, a bright red jacket that would make her easy to spot. She texted her best friend Sarah at 9:47 in the morning. "Heading out, wish you were here, this weather is perfect." Sarah texted back, "Stay safe, send pics." That was the last anyone heard from Rachel Lawson. When she didn't come home that night, Emma called her Aunt Lisa. Lisa called Sarah. Sarah called the authorities. By midnight, a search and rescue operation was underway. And here's where the story starts to get strange. Because when the search teams arrived at Eagle Creek Trail the next morning, they found Rachel's car in the parking lot. Her keys were still in the ignition. Her purse was on the passenger seat, but there was no sign of Rachel. The search dogs picked up her scent on the trail, followed it for about 3 miles, and then nothing. The scent just disappeared, vanished into thin air. The search teams were baffled. They combed through the surrounding area for days. Helicopters circled overhead using thermal imaging equipment. Volunteers formed search parties, walking shoulder to shoulder through the dense undergrowth. They found nothing. No footprints leading off the trail, no torn clothing caught on branches, no signs of a struggle, no blood, no body. Rachel Lawson had simply ceased to exist. The official search was called off after 2 weeks. The authorities classified her as a missing person, presumed dead. The general assumption was that she'd somehow fallen, perhaps into the creek, and her body had been washed away. But her family didn't believe it. How could someone just vanish like that? How could an experienced hiker on a familiar trail, in good weather with all the right equipment, simply disappear without leaving a single trace? Emma cried herself to sleep every night for months, clutching her mother's favorite sweater. Lisa took her in, tried to provide some sense of normalcy, but how do you move on when you don't have answers? How do you grieve when there's no body, no closure, no understanding of what happened? Sarah started a Facebook page, Find Rachel Lawson. She organized searches every weekend, convinced that the authorities had missed something, convinced that Rachel was out there somewhere, waiting to be found. But as the months turned into a year, and the year turned into two, hope began to fade. The searches became less frequent. The social media posts slowed down. People stopped talking about Rachel Lawson. Life moved on. Except for Emma. Emma never stopped believing her mother was alive. She would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, imagining scenarios. Maybe her mom had amnesia. Maybe she'd been kidnapped. Maybe she was living in some remote cabin, trying to find her way back home. Emma had no idea how close to the truth she actually was. It was a cold morning in early October, almost exactly 2 years after Rachel's disappearance, when everything changed. A group of hunters were deep in the Cascade Range, miles off any marked trail, when they stumbled upon an old cabin. Now, abandoned cabins aren't unusual in the Oregon wilderness. Loggers, trappers, rangers, people have been building structures in these woods for over a century. Most of them are falling apart now, reclaimed by nature, forgotten by time. But this cabin was different, because there was smoke coming from the chimney. The hunters approached cautiously. They could hear movement inside. One of them knocked on the door. No answer. They knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. One of the hunters, a man named Marcus Chen, tried the door handle. It wasn't locked. The door swung open with a long, eerie creak. And that's when they saw her. A woman huddled in the corner of the cabin, wrapped in filthy blankets, shivering uncontrollably despite the fire burning in the stone fireplace. She was emaciated, her cheekbones sharp against her pale skin. Her hair was long and matted, her clothes torn and dirt-stained. Her eyes were wide, terrified, like those of a wild animal caught in a trap. Marcus took a step forward. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need help?" The woman didn't respond. She just stared at him, her body trembling. Another hunter called 911 while Marcus tried to communicate with her. He offered her water from his canteen. She grabbed it and drank desperately, water spilling down her chin. "What's your name?" Marcus asked gently. The woman's lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Then, in a voice so hoarse it was barely recognizable as human, she whispered, "Rachel." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "Rachel? Rachel Lawson?" The woman nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. The hunters couldn't believe it. They'd all heard about the missing hiker from 2 years ago. Everyone in the region had heard about it, and now here she was, alive, in an abandoned cabin miles from where she disappeared. But how? How had she survived for 2 years in the wilderness? How had she ended up in this cabin? Where had she been all this time? And most importantly, why hadn't she come home? The rescue helicopter arrived within an hour. Paramedics loaded Rachel onto a stretcher, covered her with warm blankets, started an IV to address her severe dehydration and malnutrition. She was rushed to a hospital in Portland, where doctors examined her immediately. Physically, she was in bad shape, severely underweight, suffering from exposure, covered in scratches and bruises in various stages of healing. But she was alive. The news spread like wildfire. Missing hiker found alive after 2 years. Miracle in Oregon. Rachel Lawson discovered in remote cabin. Woman survives 2 years alone in wilderness. Lisa got the call at work. She dropped everything and raced to the hospital, Emma in the passenger seat beside her. Emma couldn't stop crying. Her mother was alive. After 2 years of not knowing, of fearing the worst, of lying awake wondering if she'd ever see her again, her mother was alive. But when they finally got to see Rachel in that hospital room, their relief quickly turned to confusion. Because Rachel didn't seem happy to see them. She didn't rush to embrace her daughter. She didn't cry tears of joy. She just sat there in the hospital bed, staring at the wall, her face blank and expressionless. "Mom," Emma whispered, approaching the bed slowly. Mom, it's me. It's Emma." Rachel turned her head slowly, her eyes focusing on her daughter's face. For a moment, there was a flicker of recognition, but then something else appeared in her eyes. Fear. "You shouldn't have come," Rachel said, her voice flat and emotionless. "It's not safe. You need to leave. You need to go home." Lisa and Emma exchanged worried glances. "Rachel, honey, we are home," Lisa said gently. "You're in Portland. You're safe now. You're in a hospital." Rachel shook her head violently. No, you don't understand. We're not safe. None of us are safe. Not here, not anywhere." "What do you mean?" Emma asked, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, what happened to you? Where were you?" Rachel's eyes darted around the room as if she was looking for something or someone. "I can't tell you. If I tell you, it will find you too. It will come for you." "What will come for us?" Lisa pressed. "Rachel, what are you talking about?" But Rachel just pulled the blanket over her head and refused to say another word. The doctors initially attributed Rachel's strange behavior to trauma. She'd been through an ordeal that would break most people. It was natural for her to be confused, disoriented, even paranoid. They ran psychological evaluations. They brought in therapists. They treated her gently, gave her space, tried to help her readjust to civilization. But Rachel remained distant, withdrawn, terrified. She would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, crying about something in the shadows, something watching her. She refused to eat hospital food, claiming it was poisoned. She wouldn't let anyone touch her. She spent hours staring out the window, muttering to herself in a language no one recognized. The medical staff was baffled. This wasn't just PTSD. This was something deeper, something more disturbing. And then 3 days after her rescue, Rachel finally started talking. Not to the doctors, not to the therapists, not to her family. She talked to the police. Detective James Morrison was the lead investigator on Rachel's case. He'd been there from the beginning, coordinating the initial search efforts, interviewing witnesses, following every lead no matter how small. When Rachel disappeared, it haunted him. He'd worked missing person cases before, but something about Rachel's case felt different. The complete lack of evidence, the way she just vanished, it didn't make sense. And now, 2 years later, here she was, alive but clearly traumatized. Morrison sat down beside Rachel's hospital bed, pulled out his notebook, and spoke in a calm, steady voice. "Rachel, I'm Detective Morrison. I was part of the team that searched for you 2 years ago. I need you to help me understand what happened. Can you do that?" Rachel looked at him for a long moment, studying his face. Then slowly she nodded. "I'll tell you," she said quietly, "but you have to promise me something." "What's that?" "You have to promise me that when I'm done, you'll protect my daughter. You'll keep her safe from what's out there. Because if you don't believe me, she's going to die." They're all going to die. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. "I promise I'll do everything in my power to keep everyone safe. Now, please, tell me what happened." Rachel took a deep breath, and then she began to speak. "I remember the hike starting normally," Rachel said, her voice distant, as if she was watching the events unfold from somewhere far away. "I parked at Eagle Creek like I always did. The weather was perfect. The trail was quiet. I felt good." She paused, her hands trembling slightly. "I hiked for maybe 3 hours. I stopped at Punchbowl Falls to eat lunch, took some pictures. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. And then I kept going. There's a section of the trail that goes along the cliff edge. You know the one? It has those cable handrails because it's so narrow and steep." Morrison nodded. He knew the section she was talking about. It was dangerous, but not unusually so for experienced hikers. "I was walking along that section when I heard something behind me. Footsteps. Heavy footsteps. Rachel's breathing quickened as she relived the memory. I turned around, expecting to see another hiker, but there was no one there. The trail behind me was empty. I kept walking, but I could still hear them. The footsteps. Getting closer, I walked faster. The footsteps walked faster too. And then I heard something else. A voice, a man's voice, whispering my name. Rachel, Rachel, Rachel. Over and over, like a chant, and like a prayer. She wrapped her arms around herself, rocking slightly. I started running. I didn't care about staying on the trail anymore. I just ran, through the trees, over rocks, through streams. I ran until my lungs were burning, and my legs were screaming, and I couldn't run anymore. And when I finally stopped, when I finally looked around, I realized I had no idea where I was. Morrison leaned forward. You got disoriented, lost. Rachel shook her head. No, it was more than that. The forest, it changed. The trees were different, darker. The light was wrong. Even the air felt different, heavier, like it was pressing down on me. I tried to retrace my steps, but everything looked the same. Every direction looked identical. I walked for hours trying to find my way back to the trail, but I just kept going in circles. And then it got dark. I've been in the forest at night before, Rachel continued. I know what it sounds like. Owls, insects, small animals rustling in the underbrush. Natural sounds. But that night, the sounds were different. Wrong. I could hear things moving around me. Big things, things that shouldn't have been there. And that voice, that man's voice, it kept calling my name. Rachel, Rachel, come to me, Rachel. I tried to ignore it. I found a spot against a large tree, curled up, tried to stay warm. I didn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like something was watching me. Something was getting closer. When the sun finally came up, I started walking again. I had no food left, just a little water. My phone was dead. I had no idea which direction to go. And then I saw it. Morrison's pen hovered over his notebook. Saw what? Rachel's eyes went distant, unfocused. The cabin, just sitting there in a clearing, like it had been waiting for me. Like it wanted me to find it. I should have been suspicious. I should have questioned why there was a cabin so deep in the forest, why it looked so well-maintained when everything else around it was walled and overgrown. But I was exhausted, terrified. I needed shelter. So I went inside. And that's when I met him. The room seemed to grow colder. Morrison felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Who did you meet, Rachel? Rachel's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I don't know his real name. He told me to call him Sam. He was already in the cabin when I arrived, sitting in a chair by the fireplace, like he'd been expecting me. He was old, maybe 70, maybe older, hard to tell. He had this long gray beard and these eyes, these strange pale eyes that seemed to look right through you. I was scared at first. I backed toward the door, ready to run, but he didn't move. He just sat there staring at me. And then he said something I'll never forget. He said, you can't leave, not yet. It's not safe out there. Stay here with me and I'll keep you safe. Morrison frowned. Keep you safe from what? Rachel's hands clenched the hospital blanket. From the thing that was hunting me. He told me that I'd stumbled into a part of the forest that wasn't meant for people, a place where the boundaries between our world and something else were thin. He said there was something that lived in those woods, something ancient and hungry, and it had marked me. He said if I tried to leave, it would find me. It would kill me. Morrison sat back, processing this information. On one hand, it sounded like the delusions of a traumatized mind. On the other hand, Rachel had survived for 2 years. Something had kept her alive out there. So you stayed, Morrison said carefully. For 2 years, you stayed in that cabin with this man. Rachel nodded. Sam taught me how to survive, how to hunt, how to fish, how to find water. He showed me which plants were safe to eat and which ones would kill me. He kept me alive. But he also kept me prisoner. The cabin had rules, Rachel said, her voice taking on a mechanical quality, as if she'd recited these rules to herself 1,000 times. Rule number 1, never go out after dark. Rule number 2, never wander more than 100 yards from the cabin. Rule number 3, if you hear your name being called, don't answer. Rule number 4, if you see something watching you from the trees, don't look at it directly. Rule number 5, never ever try to leave. Sam said these rules were the only thing keeping me alive. He said the thing in the forest was always watching, always waiting for me to make a mistake. At first, I thought he was crazy. I thought he was just a paranoid old man who'd been alone in the woods too long. I looked for opportunities to escape. I tried to make a run for it once, in the early days. Rachel's face went pale at the memory. I made it maybe 50 yards before I heard it. The same voice that had chased me that first day. The same whisper calling my name. But this time it was closer, louder. And underneath the voice there was this sound, like breathing, but wet and rattling. Like something was drowning and gasping for air at the same time. I ran back to the cabin so fast I tripped and cut my knee open on a rock. Sam patched me up without saying a word. He didn't have to. I got the message. After that, I stopped trying to leave. Morrison made a note. Did you ever see this thing? This entity that was supposedly hunting you? Rachel was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Yes, once. About 6 months into my time there. It was the middle of the night. I woke up because I needed to use the bathroom. We had an outhouse about 20 feet from the cabin. Sam's rules said never go out after dark, but I really had to go, and I figured 20 feet would be fine. I stepped outside. There was a full moon that night. So bright I could see everything clearly. Too clearly. I was halfway to the outhouse when I felt it. That feeling of being watched. I stopped walking. I held my breath, and then, very slowly, I turned my head to the left. Rachel's hands were shaking violently now. Morrison reached over and touched her arm gently. It's okay. You're safe now. Take your time. Rachel nodded, swallowed hard, and continued. It was standing at the edge of the tree line, about 30 feet away, just standing there, watching me. It looked almost human, but wrong, all wrong, too tall, too thin. Its arms were too long, hanging down past its knees. Its skin was pale, almost white, and it seemed to glow in the moonlight. But the worst part was its face. It did not have one. Where its face should have been, there was just smooth skin. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just blank, featureless skin. But somehow I knew it was looking at me. I could feel its gaze. It was like ice water in my veins. We stood there, staring at each other, or at least it staring at me, for what felt like hours but was probably only a few seconds. Then I heard Sam's voice from the cabin window. Don't look at it. Back away slowly. Don't run. So I did. One step backward, then another. The thing didn't move. It just stood there, watching. I made it back to the cabin, and Sam slammed the door shut behind me and locked it. We sat in the dark for the rest of the night, not speaking, barely breathing. And outside, we could hear it, moving around the cabin, circling, scratching at the walls, trying the windows. It didn't leave until sunrise. Morrison's rational mind wanted to dismiss Rachel's story as trauma-induced hallucinations. But the conviction in her voice, the terror in her eyes, it was hard to fake that level of genuine fear. This thing, Morrison said carefully, did Sam tell you what it was? Where it came from? Rachel nodded. He said it had been in those woods for as long as anyone could remember. Maybe longer. The local tribes had legends about it, a forest spirit that fed on lost souls. Sam said every few years it would mark someone, claim them. Most people just disappeared. Their bodies were never found. He said he'd been living in that cabin for 40 years, ever since the thing had marked his wife during a camping trip. She'd died. He'd survived. And he'd stayed there ever since, keeping other people away, trying to keep them safe. But he couldn't save everyone. He said there were others before me, others who'd stumbled into the wrong part of the forest. He tried to help them, tried to teach them the rules, but most of them didn't listen. They tried to run, and the thing caught them. Morrison frowned. If this thing was so dangerous, why didn't Sam leave? Why stay in the forest? Rachel's laugh was bitter and hollow, because he was marked too. He said, once you're marked, you can't leave. The thing will find you wherever you go. The only way to survive is to stay in the cabin, follow the rules, and hope it loses interest. Hope it finds someone else to hunt. 2 years, Morrison said quietly. You spent 2 years in that cabin with Sam. What happened during that time? Rachel stared at the wall, her eyes unfocused. We survived. That's all. We hunted. We fished. We gathered firewood. We followed the rules. Every day was the same. Wake up at sunrise, check the perimeter, make breakfast, work on maintaining the cabin, make dinner, go to sleep before dark. Sam didn't talk much. Sometimes days would go by without him saying a word, but he wasn't cruel. He shared everything he had with me. He taught me everything he knew. I asked him once if he had a family, if anyone was looking for him. He just stared into the fire and said, they stopped looking a long time ago. I'm dead to them now, just like you're dead to yours. That was the hardest part, not the fear, not the isolation, but knowing that my daughter thought I was dead, knowing that she was growing up without me, knowing that I was missing her entire life and there was nothing I could do about it. Rachel's voice broke. Tears streamed down her face. Emma was 12 when I disappeared. She's 14 now. I missed 2 years of her life, 2 birthdays, 2 Christmases. I missed her starting high school. I missed everything. And the worst part is, there were nights when I thought about giving up. Nights when I thought about just walking out into the forest and letting that thing take me. Because at least then it would be over. At least then it could have closure. But Sam wouldn't let me. Every time I got close to that edge, every time I started to lose hope, he'd pull me back. He'd remind me that my daughter needed me to survive, that she needed me to fight. Morrison handed Rachel a tissue. She wiped her eyes, took a shaky breath. Sam saved my life, not just from the thing in the forest, but from myself, from my own despair. Which is why what happened 3 weeks ago was so hard to bear. Morrison leaned forward. What happened 3 weeks ago? Rachel's expression changed. The grief was still there, but now there was something else, guilt, shame. Sam got sick. It started with a cough, then a fever. Within days, he could barely get out of bed. I tried everything I knew to help him. Herbal remedies, cold compresses. I even considered breaking the rules and trying to find help. But Sam made me promise I wouldn't. He said if I left the cabin, if I tried to get help, the thing would take me, and then we'd both be dead. So I stayed. I took care of him as best I could. But he kept getting worse. The fever wouldn't break. He started having trouble breathing. One night, about 2 weeks ago, he called me over to his bed. His skin was gray. His breathing was shallow. I knew he didn't have much time left. He grabbed my hand. His grip was so weak. And he said, Rachel, listen to me. When I'm gone, and you need to leave. You need to try to find your way home. I told him I couldn't. I told him the thing would get me, but he shook his head. I don't think it wants you anymore, he said. I think it's been watching me, waiting for me. When I die, it will come for my soul. And while it's distracted, you run. You run as fast as you can and you don't look back. I started crying. I told him I couldn't leave him. But he squeezed my hand one last time and said, you have to. You have a daughter who needs you. She's already lost 2 years. Don't let her lose the rest of her life. Rachel wiped her eyes, her voice thick with emotion. He died that night, just after midnight. One moment he was breathing, and the next he wasn't. I sat with him for a while, holding his hand, crying, duh. And then I heard it. The sound of something approaching the cabin. Heavy footsteps. That wet, rattling breath. I looked out the window and I saw it. The same faceless thing I'd seen that night 6 months ago. But this time it wasn't at the tree line. It was walking toward the cabin. Slowly, deliberately. I remembered what Sam said, while it's distracted, run. So I grabbed my jacket, took one last look at Sam's body, and I ran out the back door. I ran through the forest in complete darkness, Rachel said, her voice trembling. I had no idea where I was going. I just ran. Behind me, I could hear it, not following me, but moving around the cabin. I heard the door break. I heard the window shatter. It had come for Sam, just like he said it would. I ran until I couldn't run anymore, until my lungs were burning and my legs were cramping, and I collapsed in the dirt. I expected to hear it behind me, expected to feel its hands on my shoulders, but there was nothing, just silence. When the sun came up, I started walking. I had no food, no water, no idea where I was going, but I kept moving. I figured if I just kept walking in one direction, eventually I'd hit a road or a trail or something. I walked for 3 days. I ate berries and drank from streams. I slept under trees. I kept expecting to hear that voice calling my name, but it never came. Maybe Sam was right. Maybe it had lost interest in me. On the third day, I found the cabin where those hunters discovered me. It was abandoned, falling apart, but it had a fireplace and some old blankets. I was so exhausted I could barely stand. I figured I'd rest there for a few hours, build up my strength, and then keep moving. But I must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I knew, there were people shaking me awake, offering me water, calling for help. Rachel looked at Morrison with haunted eyes. And now I'm here, safe, but Sam is gone, and I don't know if that thing is still out there. I don't know if it is still hunting. I don't know if my family is safe. She grabbed Morrison's arm, her grip surprisingly strong. You have to find that cabin. You have to find Sam's body, and you have to destroy that thing, whatever it is. Because if you don't, someone else is going to stumble into those woods. Someone else is going to hear their name being called. And they might not be as lucky as I was. Morrison left the hospital with a head full of questions and a gut full of doubt. On one hand, Rachel's story was clearly the product of severe trauma. 2 years alone in the wilderness, isolated from civilization, surviving on minimal resources, that kind of experience would break anyone's mind. The faceless creature, the mysterious cabin keeper, the supernatural entity hunting her, it all sounded like delusions brought on by extreme stress and isolation. On the other hand, Rachel had survived. Against all odds, she had made it out of that forest alive. And whether her story was literal truth or metaphorical representation of her trauma, something had happened out there. Something had kept her away from home for 2 years. Morrison organized a search party. They used the coordinates from where the hunters had found Rachel as a starting point. They brought cadaver dogs, thermal imaging equipment, GPS trackers. The plan was to search in expanding circles until they found either the cabin Rachel had described or some evidence of where she'd been for the past 2 years. The search lasted 3 days. They found nothing. No cabin, no body, no evidence that anyone had been living in that section of forest. The dogs picked up faint traces of human scent in various locations, but the trails were old, degraded, impossible to follow. The thermal imaging showed nothing unusual. The GPS data revealed no structures, no clearings, nothing that matched Rachel's description. It was as if the cabin had never existed. Morrison reported his findings to Rachel. She wasn't surprised. "You won't find it," she said quietly. "That place, it's not on any map. It's not part of the normal forest. Sam told me that. He said the cabin existed in a space between worlds. People can't find it unless it wants to be found." Morrison didn't know what to say to that. The media had a field day with Rachel's story. Headlines screamed about the miracle woman who survived 2 years in the wilderness. Talk shows wanted her as a guest. Reporters camped outside the hospital, desperate for an interview. Rachel refused them all. She stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks, undergoing physical therapy to rebuild her strength, working with therapists to process her trauma. The doctors said she was making good progress, all things considered. Her body was healing. Her mind was a different story. Emma visited every day. She would sit by her mother's bedside, holding her hand, telling her about school, about her friends, about all the things that had happened in the 2 years Rachel had been gone. Rachel listened quietly, trying to reconcile the little girl she remembered with the young woman sitting beside her now. Emma had grown. She was taller. Her voice was deeper. She wore makeup now. She looked so much older, so much more mature. 2 years. Rachel had lost 2 years of her daughter's life, years she could never get back. The guilt ate at her like acid. One afternoon, Emma asked the question Rachel had been dreading. Mom, what was it like out there? Were you scared? Rachel looked at her daughter's face, so young and trusting, and she made a decision. She couldn't tell Emma the truth. She couldn't burden her daughter with the knowledge of what was really out there in the forest. She couldn't plant those seeds of fear and paranoia, so she lied. I was lost, Rachel said simply. I got turned around on the trail, wandered into an area I didn't recognize. I found an old hunting cabin and stayed there, surviving on what I could find. I wanted to come home, baby. Every single day I wanted to come home, but I couldn't find my way back, and eventually I was too weak to keep searching. Emma's eyes filled with tears. But you're home now, you're safe now. Rachel pulled her daughter into a hug, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling the warmth of her body. Yes, she whispered, I'm home now. But even as she said it, even as she held her daughter close, Rachel's eyes drifted to the window, to the trees visible in the distance, and she wondered if she was really safe, if any of them were really safe. Because sometimes late at night, when the hospital was quiet and dark, Rachel would hear it, faint, distant, but unmistakable. Her name being called from somewhere far away. Rachel, Rachel, Rachel. Rachel was released from the hospital on a gray, drizzly afternoon in late October. Lisa pulled up in her car, Emma in the passenger seat. They'd brought comfortable clothes for Rachel, a favorite sweater she'd left behind 2 years ago, a pair of soft shoes. Small comforts to help her transition back to normal life. But as Rachel walked out of the hospital and climbed into the car, she realized that normal didn't exist anymore. How could it? How could she go back to her old life, her old routines, when she'd spent 2 years living in constant fear, following arbitrary rules to stay alive, watching a man die, and then running through the dark forest alone? The drive to Lisa's house was quiet. Emma chattered nervously about the welcome home party they'd planned, about all of Rachel's favorite foods they'd prepared. Rachel smiled and nodded, but her eyes kept drifting to the windows, to the trees lining the highway. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her, following her. When they arrived at Lisa's house, a small group of people were waiting. Sarah, her old hiking buddies, a few teachers from Emma's school. They decorated the living room with balloons and a banner that read, Welcome home, Rachel. Everyone hugged her. Everyone told her how happy they were that she was safe, that she was alive. Rachel went through the motions, accepting their embraces, thanking them for their support. But inside, she felt hollow. These people, her friends, her family, they thought they understood what she'd been through. They thought she'd simply gotten lost, survived through grit and determination. And now everything could go back to normal. They had no idea. They had no idea about Sam, about the rules, about the thing with no face that circled the cabin at night, scratching at the walls, calling her name. They had no idea that even now, sitting in this warm, brightly lit living room, surrounded by people who loved her, Rachel could feel its presence, watching, waiting. The nightmare started that first night home. Rachel would fall asleep and immediately find herself back in the forest, back in the cabin. Sometimes Sam would be there, sitting by the fire, not speaking. Sometimes she'd be alone, listening to the scratching sounds outside the walls. And sometimes she'd be outside, running through the dark trees, hearing the wet, rattling breath getting closer and closer behind her. She'd wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Emma would rush into her room, holding her, telling her it was okay, she was safe, it was just a dream. But Rachel knew better. It wasn't just a dream. She started seeing signs during the day, small things at first, branches arranged in strange patterns in Lisa's backyard, scratches on the window that hadn't been there before, the sound of footsteps on the roof at night. She didn't tell anyone. What would she say? That the thing from the forest had followed her home? That it was still hunting her? They'd think she was crazy. They'd probably be right. Maybe she was crazy. Maybe 2 years of isolation and fear had broken something fundamental in her mind, and now she was seeing threats that didn't exist, hearing voices that weren't there. But then things started escalating. One night, about a week after Rachel came home, Emma woke up crying. Lisa rushed to her room and found her sitting up in bed, trembling. "What's wrong, honey?" Lisa asked. "Someone was calling my name," Emma whispered. "Outside my window. I heard them saying Emma, Emma, Emma over and over." Lisa checked outside. There was no one there, no footprints in the dirt, no signs that anyone had been near the house. She chalked it up to a bad dream, to the stress of having her mother back after 2 years. But Rachel knew. It was marking Emma. The thing from the forest was marking her daughter. Rachel made a decision that night. She couldn't stay. If she stayed, she'd put Emma in danger. She'd put everyone in danger. The thing wanted her, and it would go through her family to get to her. She had to leave. She waited until everyone was asleep. Then she packed a small bag, some clothes, some food, the little money she'd managed to save. She crept downstairs, careful not to wake anyone. She was halfway to the door when she heard a voice behind her. "You're leaving." Rachel turned. Emma was standing at the bottom of the stairs wearing her pajamas, her eyes red from crying. "You were going to leave without saying goodbye." Rachel felt her heart break. "Emma, sweetheart, I have to go. It's not safe for me to stay here. It's not safe for you." "Because of the thing in the forest." Rachel's blood ran cold. "What?" Emma walked closer. "I know you lied to me, Mom, about what happened out there. I know you weren't just lost. I know something else happened, something you're not telling me. And I know it followed you home, because I've heard it too. Calling my name, scratching at my window. I've seen it in the shadows." Tears streamed down Rachel's face. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I never wanted this for you. I never wanted you to be part of this." "Then don't leave," Emma said fiercely. "Don't run away. Stay and fight. Whatever this thing is, we'll face it together." Rachel shook her head. "You don't understand. This thing, it can't be fought. It can't be killed. The only way to survive is to follow the rules, and I can't do that here. I can't drag you into that life." "Then teach me the rules," Emma said. "Teach me how to survive. You did it for 2 years. We can do it together." Rachel looked at her daughter, so brave, so determined, and she realized that Emma wasn't a little girl anymore. The past 2 years had changed her too. She'd grown up. She'd learned to be strong, and maybe, just maybe, they could survive this together. Rachel and Emma sat at the kitchen table as the first light of dawn crept through the windows. Rachel told her daughter everything. About the trail, about hearing footsteps behind her, about finding the cabin and meeting Sam, about the rules, about the thing with no face. Emma listened without interrupting, her eyes wide, her hands gripping the edge of the table. When Rachel finished, Emma was quiet for a long moment. "Okay," she finally said. "So what do we do?" Rachel had been thinking about that. Sam said the thing marks people, claims them, and once you're marked, it never stops hunting. But he also said it could only truly hurt you if you broke the rules. "So we follow the rules," Emma said. "But we can't live in a cabin in the middle of the forest," Rachel said. "We can't isolate ourselves from everyone forever. There has to be another way." Emma's face lit up. "What about research? What if we try to find out more about this thing? Where it came from, what it wants, how to stop it?" Rachel felt a flicker of hope. Sam mentioned that the local tribes had legends about it. Maybe we could start there. Talk to elders, read historical records, find out if anyone else has encountered this thing and survived. "And if we can figure out what it is," Emma continued, "maybe we can figure out how to break the connection, how to unmark ourselves." It was a long shot, but it was better than running, better than spending the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders, waiting for the thing to finally catch them. "Okay," Rachel said. "We do this together, but Emma, you have to promise me something. If it ever comes for you, if it ever gets too dangerous, you run. You don't try to fight it. You don't try to save me. You just run and you don't look back." Emma reached across the table and grabbed her mother's hand. "I'm not leaving you again, Mom. We're in this together, no matter what." The research started slowly. Rachel reached out to local historians, anthropologists, anyone who might have knowledge about the indigenous tribes that had lived in the Oregon forests centuries ago. She scoured libraries and historical societies, looking for any mention of forest spirits or supernatural entities. Emma helped, using her skills with technology to search online databases, forums, paranormal websites. She found stories from other hikers who claimed to have encountered something strange in the woods. Most of them were dismissed as hoaxes or overactive imaginations, but a few stood out. There was a man in Washington who claimed he had been followed by something faceless during a camping trip. He'd managed to escape, but he said he could still hear it sometimes, calling his name. There was a woman in California who said her sister had disappeared in a national forest 20 years ago and was never found. But in the weeks before the disappearance, the sister had complained about hearing whispers in the trees, about feeling watched. There were others, scattered reports, fragmented stories, but they all had common threads. Being in the forest alone, hearing voices or footsteps, seeing something that shouldn't exist, and then either disappearing or escaping with psychological trauma. Rachel and Emma compiled everything they found into a journal, cross-referencing dates, locations, descriptions. Patterns began to emerge. The encounters seemed to cluster around certain areas: remote forests, places where few people ventured, areas with indigenous legends about spirits or otherworldly beings. And the entity itself seemed to be drawn to people who were alone, vulnerable, lost. It marked them somehow, claimed them, and once claimed, they either disappeared forever or spent the rest of their lives haunted by its presence. But nowhere in all their research did they find a solution. No one who'd been marked had ever successfully broken free. The best anyone had managed was what Sam had done: isolate themselves, follow strict rules, and hope to outlast the entity's interest. It wasn't enough. Emma needed a real life. She needed to go to school, have friends, build a future. She couldn't spend her teenage years locked in a cabin, hiding from something in the shadows. There had to be another way. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Rachel had reached out to a professor of Native American Studies at the University of Oregon, asking if he knew of any tribal legends related to forest entities. The professor, Dr. Henry Blackwood, was initially dismissive, but when Rachel described her experience in detail, his attitude changed. He invited her to his office on campus. Rachel went alone, leaving Emma with Lisa. She didn't want to get her daughter's hopes up if this turned out to be nothing. Dr. Blackwood was a man in his 60s with graying hair and kind eyes. His office was cluttered with books and artifacts, maps of the Pacific Northwest covering the walls. "You said you encountered something in the Cascade Range," he said after Rachel sat down. "Something without a face, something that called your name and followed you." Rachel nodded. Dr. Blackwood pulled out an old leather-bound journal from his desk drawer. The Chinook people, who lived in these regions for thousands of years, had a legend about a spirit they called the Winuska. Loosely translated, it means the hungry one or the empty one. He opened the journal and showed Rachel a page filled with handwritten notes and sketches. One sketch depicted a tall, thin figure with no facial features. Rachel's breath caught. It was the thing from the forest. According to the legend, Dr. Blackwood continued, the Winuska was once human, a shaman who delved too deeply into forbidden rituals, seeking power over life and death. But the spirits he called upon consumed him instead, hollowing him out, leaving nothing but hunger. He became a thing between worlds, neither living nor dead, forever seeking to fill the emptiness inside him. The Winuska would mark those who wandered too deep into sacred forests. It would claim their essence, their soul feeding on their fear and isolation. Most people it marked would simply disappear, pulled into whatever realm the Winuska inhabited. Rachel's hands were shaking. "Sam, the man I met in the cabin, he said it had been in those woods for as long as anyone could remember." "This fits." Dr. Blackwood nodded grimly. The Chinook believed the Winuska could never be killed. It existed outside the normal rules of life and death. But they did have rituals, ways to protect themselves, ways to appease the entity, or, in some cases, sever its connection to those it had marked. Rachel leaned forward. How? How do you sever the connection?" Dr. Blackwood hesitated. "The ritual was dangerous. It required the marked individual to willingly return to the place where they were first claimed, to face the Winuska directly, to offer something of value in exchange for their freedom." "What kind of offering?" "The legends are vague on that point. Some versions say it required a sacrifice, the life of someone close to the marked individual. Others say it required confronting one's deepest fears, proving that the Winuska no longer held power over them. Rachel felt her heart sink. Return to the forest? Face that thing again? The thought alone made her want to vomit. But what choice did she have? Emma was marked now too, and Rachel would do anything, anything to protect her daughter. Is there anything else? Rachel asked. Any other information about the ritual? Dr. Blackwood flipped through the journal. There's mention of specific items that were used in the protection rituals, certain herbs that were burned, patterns drawn in the earth, words spoken in the Chinook language. He looked up at Rachel seriously. But I have to warn you, these are legends, stories passed down through generations. I can't guarantee that any of this is real or that it will work. Rachel stood up. I don't have a choice. That thing has my daughter in its sights. If there's even a chance this could work, I have to try. Dr. Blackwood studied her for a long moment, then nodded. I'll compile everything I have on the Winuska and the protection rituals. Give me a few days. Thank you, Rachel said. You have no idea what this means to me. As she left his office, Rachel felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Rachel spent the next few days preparing. Dr. Blackwood sent her detailed notes on the Chinook rituals, including sketches of protection symbols, a list of herbs that were believed to ward off evil spirits, and phonetic pronunciations of the words that needed to be spoken. Rachel practiced the words over and over, even though they felt strange and clumsy in her mouth. She gathered the herbs, cloves, cedar, tobacco. She drew the protection symbols on paper until she could recreate them perfectly. And she steeled herself for what she knew had to come next. She had to go back to the forest, back to the place where she'd been marked, back to the cabin where Sam had died. She had to face the Winuska. Emma wanted to come with her. No, Rachel said firmly. Absolutely not. This is too dangerous. You can't do this alone, Emma protested. What if something happens to you? What if I lose you again? You won't lose me, Rachel said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. I'm going to do the ritual, sever the connection, and come home, and then we'll both be free. But what if it doesn't work? Rachel didn't have an answer for that. The night before she planned to leave, Rachel sat Emma down and gave her a letter. If I'm not back in 3 days, Rachel said quietly, I want you to open this. It has instructions, people to contact, what to do. Promise me you'll follow them. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Mom, please don't go. Rachel pulled her arm into a tight hug. I have to, baby. This is the only way to keep you safe. And I promise you I will do everything in my power to come home. She held Emma until the girl's sobs subsided, until her breathing evened out. I love you, Rachel whispered. More than anything in this world. I love you too, Mom, Emma whispered back. Rachel left at dawn. She drove to the trailhead at Eagle Creek, the same place where her nightmare had begun 2 years ago. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few cars belonging to early morning hikers. Rachel shouldered her backpack, filled with the herbs, matches, a compass, some food and water, and the notes from Dr. Blackwood. She'd memorized the ritual, but she wanted the written instructions as a backup. She also carried a knife. Not that she thought it would do any good against the Winuska, but it made her feel slightly less vulnerable. The trail was exactly as she remembered it. Beautiful, peaceful, deceptively serene. Rachel started walking. She knew roughly where she'd been when she first heard the footsteps behind her, and it was a few miles in, near the section of trail that ran along the cliff edge. Her heart pounded as she approached that section. Memories flooded back, the sound of heavy footsteps, the voice calling her name, the terror that had driven her off the trail and deep into the unknown forest. She reached the spot and stopped. This was it, the place where it had all started. Rachel took a deep breath and stepped off the trail into the dense undergrowth. Almost immediately she felt it, that sense of wrongness. The air grew heavier. The light dimmed even though it was midday. The sounds of the forest, birds, insects, wind, faded to an oppressive silence. She was entering its territory. Rachel kept walking, using the compass to maintain a straight line. According to the Chinook legends, the Winuska's realm existed in a space between the physical world and the spirit world. You couldn't find it by normal means. You had to be marked. You had to be claimed. And you had to be willing to face it. Rachel had all three. She walked for what felt like hours, though her watch insisted only 30 minutes had passed. Time felt different here, elastic and unreliable. And then, through the trees ahead, she saw it. The cabin. It looked exactly as she remembered. Small, weathered, but solid. Smoke curled from the chimney as if someone inside had just lit a fire. Rachel's stomach clenched. She knew that was impossible. Sam was dead. She'd watched him die. Unless... She approached the cabin slowly, every nerve screaming at her to run. The door was slightly ajar. Rachel pushed it open and stepped inside. The interior was dim, lit only by the fire crackling in the stone fireplace. And sitting in the chair beside the fire, exactly as he'd been the first time Rachel found the cabin, was Sam. He looked up at her, his pale eyes meeting hers. "Hello, Rachel," he said calmly. "I've been expecting you." Rachel's mind reeled. This wasn't possible. Sam was dead. She'd held his hand as he took his last breath. She'd heard the thing break into the cabin after he died. "You're not real," she whispered. Sam smiled sadly. "Aren't I? What's real anymore, Rachel? After everything you've seen, everything you've experienced, can you really say with certainty what's real and what isn't?" He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. We need to talk." Rachel didn't move. "If you're Sam, prove it. Tell me something only he would know." The figure tilted his head. "I told you the first rule was never go out after dark. I taught you to fish using a net I wove from willow branches. I told you about my wife, how she died on a camping trip 40 years ago. It was all true, but anyone or anything that had been watching them could have known those things." "What was my daughter's name?" Rachel asked. "I told you about her. What was her name?" Sam's expression softened. "Emma. You told me Emma was 12 when you disappeared. You told me you'd missed her 13th birthday. You cried about it." Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. It was him. Somehow, impossibly, it was Sam. "How are you here?" she asked. Sam gestured around the cabin. "This place exists outside of normal space and time. It's a threshold, a place between your world and the Winuska's realm. I've been tied to it since my wife died. When my body gave out, my spirit remained. Trapped, just as yours will be if you don't leave right now." "I can't leave," Rachel said. "Not until I do the ritual. Not until I sever the connection between the Winuska and my daughter." Sam's eyes widened. "Rachel, no. You can't perform that ritual. You don't understand what it requires. The Chinook legends say it requires facing the Winuska directly, offering something of value. I'm willing to do that." "The offering isn't an object, Rachel. It's not something you can hand over and walk away. The offering is a choice, a sacrifice." Rachel felt ice water flow in her veins. "What kind of sacrifice?" Sam stood up, his form seeming to waver slightly in the firelight. "The Winuska feeds on souls, on life essence. To sever its connection to someone it's marked, you have to offer it a replacement, another soul in exchange for the one you're trying to save." Rachel shook her head. No, the legends didn't say that. Dr. Blackwood didn't tell me that. Because the full truth of the ritual was suppressed. The Chinook people considered it an abomination. They would rather face the Winuska themselves than condemn someone else to its hunger. Sam moved closer to Rachel. "You came here to save your daughter. I understand that. But you can't save her by sacrificing yourself. If you offer your soul to the Winuska, Emma will be free, yes, but you'll be trapped here forever, and she'll have to live with the knowledge that her mother died to save her." Rachel's legs felt weak. She sank into the chair. "There has to be another way." "There isn't. I've been here for 40 years, Rachel. I've seen others try. I've watched them fail. The Winuska is ancient and powerful. It doesn't follow rules we can understand. It doesn't negotiate, it only hungers." Rachel put her head in her hands. This couldn't be it. She couldn't have come all this way, gotten so close, only to find out the solution was impossible. Unless, Sam said slowly. Rachel looked up. Unless what? Sam was quiet for a long moment, as if weighing his words carefully. There's one other possibility, a way that's never been tried as far as I know, because it requires something incredibly rare. It requires two people who've been marked by the Weenuska to work together. What do you mean? The Weenuska marks people because it's hungry. It feeds on fear, on isolation, on the slow consumption of their soul. But what if instead of offering it another soul, you offered it nothing? What if you faced it together, you and someone else it's marked, and you refused to be afraid? Rachel frowned. I don't understand. Sam leaned forward. The Weenuska's power comes from your fear, from your belief that it can hurt you. But what if you stopped believing? What if you confronted it, looked it in its faceless void, and refused to give it the fear it craves? What if you starved it instead of feeding it? Would that work? I don't know, Sam admitted. Like I said, it's never been tried. Most people who encounter the Weenuska are alone. They don't have anyone to face it with them. But you have Emma. She's marked too. If you faced it together, if you held on to each other and refused to let it separate you, refused to let fear control you, maybe, just maybe, you could break its hold. Hope flared in Rachel's chest. Emma, I need Emma. She's already on her way, Sam said quietly. Rachel's blood ran cold. What? She followed you. She's been walking through the forest for the past hour. She'll be here soon. No, Rachel stood up, panic flooding through her. No, she can't be here. I told her to stay home. It's too dangerous. She's your daughter, Rachel. Did you really think she'd let you face this alone? Rachel ran outside, scanning the tree line. Emma, she shouted. Mama, where are you? The forest was silent, and then from somewhere in the distance, she heard it. A voice. Emma's voice. Mom? Mom, where are you? I'm lost. Everything looks the same. Mom, please, I'm scared. Rachel started running toward the voice, her heart pounding. Emma, keep talking. I'm coming. Follow my voice. But as Rachel ran through the trees, Emma's voice seemed to move. First it was ahead of her, then to the left, then behind her. Rachel stopped, breathing hard, realization dawning. It wasn't Emma. The Weenuska was using her daughter's voice. Rachel. She spun around. Standing 20 feet away, barely visible in the shadows between the trees, was the thing from her nightmares. The Weenuska. Tall, impossibly thin, skin like pale moonlight, and where its face should have been, nothing, just smooth, blank skin. But Rachel could feel it looking at her, could feel its hunger. Where's my daughter? Rachel demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. What did you do with Emma? The Weenuska didn't speak. It couldn't speak. It had no mouth. But Rachel heard a voice anyway, inside her head, cold and ancient and infinitely patient. She is mine now, just as you are mine, just as all who enter my forest are mine. No, Rachel said. You can't have her. I won't let you. You cannot stop me. You are marked. She is marked. Your souls belong to me. Rachel's hands were shaking, but she forced herself to stand her ground. Sam told me about you, about the ritual, about how your power comes from fear. Sam is dead. His soul has already fed me. Yours will be next. And then the girls. I'm not afraid of you, Rachel said, even though it was a lie, even though terror was coursing through every cell of her body. The Weenuska tilted its head, a movement that was somehow more disturbing than if it had been truly still. You lie. I can taste your fear. It is delicious. And then it started walking toward her, slowly, deliberately, its two long arms swaying at its sides. Rachel wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and flee. But she remembered what Sam had said. The Weenuska's power came from fear, from isolation, from making its victims believe they were powerless. She had to fight that. She had to stand her ground. I'm not alone, Rachel said. Emma is here. We're together. And together, we're stronger than you. The Weenuska paused. And then Rachel heard Emma's real voice. Not the mimicry from before, but her actual daughter. Mom. Rachel turned. Emma was running toward her through the trees, her face pale and streaked with tears. "Emma, stop!" Rachel shouted. "Don't come any closer." But Emma didn't stop. She ran straight to her mother and grabbed her hand. "I'm not leaving you," Emma said fiercely. "We do this together. Remember?" The Winuska stood 10 feet away now, watching them. Rachel squeezed Emma's hand. "Okay, together." She turned to face the entity. Emma stood beside her, their hands clasped so tightly their knuckles were white. "We're not afraid of you," Rachel said, her voice stronger now. "You're just a thing, a remnant of something that used to be human. You're empty, hollow, and we won't feed you anymore." The Winuska moved closer, 5 feet away now. Rachel could smell it, a scent like rotting leaves and stagnant water. Emma was crying, but she didn't let go of her mother's hand. "We choose to be free," Rachel continued. "We choose to break your hold. You have no power over us. Not anymore." The Winuska reached out with one long, pale arm. Rachel closed her eyes, bracing for its touch. And then Emma spoke, not in English, in Chinook. The words Dr. Blackwood had written in his notes. The words of the protection ritual. Emma's pronunciation was clumsy, uncertain, but she spoke them with conviction. Rachel opened her eyes. The Winuska had stopped moving. Its arm was still extended, but it wasn't getting any closer. Rachel picked up where Emma left off, speaking the next part of the ritual. Her voice and Emma's intertwined, creating a strange harmony. The symbols. They needed to draw the symbols. Rachel pulled the paper from her pocket, the one with the protection patterns. She and Emma knelt on the forest floor and started scratching the symbols into the dirt with sticks. A circle. Lines radiating outward. Ancient shapes whose meaning had been lost to time but whose power remained. The Winuska screamed. It had no mouth, but the sound came anyway, a high-pitched shriek that seemed to tear through reality itself. The forest shook. Trees swayed. The ground trembled. But Rachel and Emma kept drawing, kept speaking the words. And slowly, impossibly, the Winuska began to fade. Its form grew less solid, less defined. The pale skin became translucent. Rachel could see the trees through its body. "It's working," Emma whispered. The Winuska reached for them one more time, its movements desperate now. But its hand passed through Rachel's shoulder like smoke. It had no substance anymore. No power. The entity that had haunted these woods for centuries, that had claimed countless souls, was being undone by two people who refused to be afraid. With one final silent scream, the Winuska dissolved completely. For a moment, the forest was utterly silent. And then, slowly, sound returned. Birds singing, wind rustling through leaves, the normal, natural sounds of a living forest. The oppressive heaviness in the air lifted. The shadows seemed less dark. Everything felt lighter. Rachel and Emma sat on the ground, still holding hands, breathing hard. "Is it gone?" Emma asked. Rachel nodded slowly. "I think so. I think we did it." They sat there for a long time, neither one willing to move, afraid that if they stood up, the Winuska would reappear. But it didn't. Finally, Rachel got to her feet, pulling Emma up with her. "Let's go home," she said. They found their way out of the forest easily. The compass worked. The trails were clear. There was no sense of being turned around or lost. It took them 3 hours of hiking to reach the parking lot at Eagle Creek. Rachel's car was still there, exactly where she'd left it. They climbed in, closed the doors, and sat in silence for a moment. "Did that really just happen?" Emma asked. "Yeah," Rachel said, "Thumbo. I think it did." "So we're free now? It's really over?" Rachel started the car. "I don't know, but I think so. I think we broke the connection." As they drove away from the trailhead, Rachel looked in the rearview mirror one last time. The forest stood silent and still. No movement in the shadows. No sense of being watched. For the first time in 2 years, Rachel felt truly free. The weeks that followed were strange. Rachel waited for the nightmares to return, for the scratching sounds at the windows, for the voice calling her name in the dark. But they never came. She and Emma both slept through the nights, no screaming, no cold sweats, just normal, restful sleep. Lisa noticed the change immediately. "You both seem Different, she said one morning over breakfast. Lighter somehow. Rachel smiled. We are. We finally got some closure. It wasn't exactly a lie. They had gotten closure, just not the kind anyone would believe if they tried to explain it. Emma went back to school. She laughed with her friends again, made plans for the future, started talking about college. Rachel started rebuilding her life too. She began substitute teaching at Emma's school, easing back into her career. She went hiking again, though never alone and never at Eagle Creek. Some places held too many memories. Detective Morrison visited a few times, still curious about what had really happened during those 2 years. Rachel stuck to her story. She'd gotten lost, found a cabin, survived with help from an old hermit named Sam. Morrison didn't entirely believe her, but he couldn't prove otherwise, and eventually he stopped asking questions. Life slowly returned to something resembling normal, but Rachel never forgot. She never forgot Sam, who had saved her life and taught her to survive. She never forgot the Winuska, the hungry thing that had hunted her through the darkness. She never forgot the terror, the isolation, the desperate hope that had kept her alive. And she never forgot the lesson she'd learned in that forest. That sometimes the scariest monsters aren't the ones in the shadows. They're the ones in your own mind. The fear that tells you you're powerless. The isolation that tells you you're alone. But if you can face that fear, if you can hold on to the people you love and refuse to let go, you can survive anything, even the darkest forest, even the most terrifying monster, even the thing that has no face. 6 months after her rescue, Rachel did an interview with a local news station. The reporter asked the question everyone wanted to know. How did you survive 2 years in the wilderness? Rachel thought carefully about her answer. She could tell the truth. She could talk about the Winuska, about Sam, about the ritual and the confrontation. But who would believe her? They'd think she was crazy, traumatized, delusional. So instead, she said, I survived because I had someone to come home to. My daughter Emma gave me a reason to keep fighting, even when it would have been easier to give up. Love is more powerful than fear. Family is more powerful than isolation. And hope is more powerful than despair. That's what saved me. Not skills or luck or even determination. It was love. The reporter nodded, satisfied with the answer. After the interview, Emma hugged her mom. That was a good answer, she said. It was the truth, Rachel replied, just not the whole truth. Do you think we should tell people the whole truth someday about what really happened? Rachel considered this. Maybe, but not yet. Right now, we need to focus on living, on healing, on building the future we almost lost. Besides, Rachel added with a small smile, if we told people about the Winuska, they might go looking for it. And I'd rather it stay forgotten, buried deep in the forest where it can't hurt anyone else. Do you think it's really gone? Emma asked. Or did we just break its connection to us? It was a question Rachel had been asking herself. The truth was she didn't know. Maybe they destroyed the Winuska completely. Maybe they just severed its link to them specifically. Maybe it was still out there in the forest, waiting for the next person to wander too far off the trail, to hear footsteps behind them, to be marked and claimed. But Rachel chose to believe they'd ended it. She chose to believe that by facing their fear together, by refusing to feed the entity's hunger, they'd starved it into non-existence. She chose to believe in hope. Now, I want you to understand something. Rachel's story isn't just about a supernatural entity in the woods. It's about the dangers we face every day, often without realizing it. It's about the importance of being prepared when we venture into unknown places. It's about the power of fear to paralyze us, to make us feel helpless and alone. And it's about the even greater power of love and connection to overcome that fear. So let me share with you the 5 crucial lessons we can take from Rachel's experience. 5 things that could save your life or the life of someone you love. Lesson number 5. Be aware of the psychological toll that extreme environments can have on individuals. Rachel spent 2 years in isolation, following arbitrary rules, living in constant fear. That kind of experience changes a person. It warps their perception of reality. It creates trauma that can last a lifetime. If you or someone you know is planning to spend extended time in the wilderness, understand that it's not just about physical survival. Mental health is equally important. Have a support system. Have a way to maintain connection with the outside world. Don't let isolation become a breeding ground for fear and paranoia. Lesson number 4. Always trust your instincts and seek help when in doubt. Rachel heard footsteps behind her on the trail. She felt something was wrong, and she was right. But instead of turning back, instead of finding other hikers or calling for help, she ran deeper into the forest. If something feels off, if your instincts are screaming at you that you're in danger, listen to them. Don't dismiss those feelings as paranoia. Turn back. Find other people. Get to safety. It's better to feel foolish for being overcautious than to end up lost or worse. Lesson number 3. Familiarize yourself with the environment before venturing into remote areas. Rachel knew Eagle Creek Trail. She'd hiked it many times before, but she didn't know what lay beyond it. She didn't know the legends, the history, the potential dangers of wandering off the marked path. Before you go into any wilderness area, do your research. Learn about the terrain, the wildlife, the weather patterns. Talk to locals. Read about other people's experiences. Knowledge is survival. Lesson number 2. Keep loved ones informed of your plans and whereabouts at all times. Rachel told people she was going hiking. She texted her friend, but she didn't leave detailed information about her planned route, her expected return time, or what to do if she didn't come back. Always leave detailed information with someone you trust. Tell them exactly where you're going, what trail you'll be on, when you expect to return. Give them permission to call search and rescue if you are late. This simple step has saved countless lives. And lesson number 1, the most important lesson of all, never underestimate the importance of mental preparedness in potentially dangerous situations. Rachel survived because she found a way to maintain hope, even in the darkest circumstances. She held on to her love for Emma. She accepted help from Sam. She learned, adapted, and ultimately fought back. Mental preparation means accepting that things can go wrong. It means having a plan for worst-case scenarios. It means training yourself to stay calm under pressure, to think clearly when fear wants to take over. But most importantly, it means remembering that you're not alone, that there are people who love you, people who will fight for you, people who will never stop looking for you. That's what brought Rachel home, not skill or luck, but the unbreakable bond between a mother and her daughter. So what do you think? Do you believe Rachel's story? Do you think the Winuska was real, or was it a manifestation of trauma and isolation? Do you think there are places in this world where the boundaries between reality and something else grow thin? Have you ever experienced something in nature that you couldn't explain? Something that made you feel like you weren't alone, like you were being watched by something that shouldn't exist? I want to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and share your story. I read every single comment and I reply to as many as I can. And if Rachel's story resonated with you, if it made you think about the people you love and how far you'd go to protect them, then I need you to do something for me. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, a friend who loves hiking, a family member who takes risks, someone who might benefit from these lessons. Because the truth is, we never know when we might face our own dark forest, our own faceless monster, our own moment of terror and choice. But if we're prepared, if we're connected to the people we love, if we refuse to let fear control us, we can survive anything. We can find our way home. And if you believe that everyone deserves to be found, no matter how lost they seem, if you believe that hope is more powerful than fear, then hit that subscribe button right now. Because Rachel's story isn't unique. There are thousands of people who disappear every year. Thousands of families left wondering what happened to their loved ones. And I'm dedicated to telling their stories, to keeping their memories alive, to maybe, just maybe, helping someone find their way home. This channel is about more than just true crime or missing persons cases. It's about the human capacity for survival, the power of love, the strength we find when we're pushed to our absolute limits. It's about hope. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and join me as we explore more stories of survival, mystery, and the unbreakable human spirit. Thank you for watching Rachel's story. Thank you for caring about what happened to her. And remember, if you ever find yourself lost in the dark, if you ever hear footsteps behind you that shouldn't be there, if you ever feel like something is calling your name from the shadows, don't face it alone. Hold on to the people you love. Refuse to give in to fear. And fight with everything you have to find your way home, because you deserve to be found. Everyone deserves to be found. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there.